if you have been with us earlier this month, you know that the month of January, we are kicking off our annual theme, and it is also our theme for the month, Igniting the Power Within. And in week 1, we looked at the first chapter in the introduction to the science of mind, which is titled The Thing Itself, and that's all about what is God's Spirit, by whatever name you call it. What really is that? And diving into understanding it, recognizing its power, its omnipresence, and its source, it as the source of all creation. And then in chapter 2 of the introductory 4 chapters, the way it works. Last week, Reverend Karen gave us some insight into how it works, how God works, how Spirit works. And we've been able in the first couple of weeks to begin to look at and remind ourselves that God is all of it. And even when we look at the 3 different ways that God expresses, that Spirit expresses in the world and in our individual lives, it is still all one thing, the thing itself, expressing and creating life in the collective and life individualized in each one of us. And so today we're going to look at chapter 3 in the introduction, and the title of that chapter is What It Does, what Spirit does, as it is creating and as it is supporting and guiding and simply being life itself. Collectively and for us individually, what is it that Spirit is doing? And for those of you who like the full roadmap, next week, Dr. Petra will be back and she will be talking about how to use it. And so today we get to focus in on what does Spirit do? And what I know is true, and we've been reinforcing that this month, is that we are surrounded by infinite possibility, like infinite, like unlimited, like there are no words in the human language, let alone the English language, that actually can capture the infinite possibility of what is available to us. We are surrounded by an infinite possibility, and it can pass into expression through us only as we consciously allow it to do so. And that's part of the reason why we each have different ways to express our lives, because we actually have some impact on what happens in the context of humanity having free will. We are required to make choices about what is important to us at this stage of our life and in our life and our values overall. And based on what I consciously allow to occur in me, as me, and through me, that is how life expresses. And that's true for each one of us individually, and it is also true as all of our individual lives come together to create our city, our workplace, our nation, and life on this planet as we know it. So I was thinking about all of this, of course, knowing I was going to be talking about it. And I don't know where the idea came from. Ha, ha, ha. It's from out of the blue, you know. But something came to mind to think about fire. So when I lit the flame this morning, it's like, how does that happen? And does it have anything to do with how I live my life? When I plant a seed in the soil, right? And we use that a lot as a metaphor. Like, what's that got to do with the way I live my life? And so there's something that some of you may be familiar with called the fire triangle. And the fire triangle is a description or an illustration of what scientists will tell you. There's some chemistry happening when there's a fire or a flame. There's physics that are happening. Now, science, when I was in high school, the lowest grade I got in all the time I was in high school was in my physics class. So my physics teacher would be like, she's talking about anything science? Really? Like, are you sure? But the idea of fire, or even creating the flame, which is a form of fire, there are 3 elements that are required for fire. So put on your scientist cap for just a minute. The 3 elements are oxygen, there must be some kind of fuel, and then there must be a heat source. So when you think about that, when those 3 things are combined in the correct way, the result is fire. Now, I found it really interesting that oxygen, when you think about it, oxygen is responsive to the environment it is in. It's always present. I mean, so we can think of a few places where that's not. But in general, in our lives, it's always present. It's invisible. We can't see it. Does that remind you of anything? Right? And the fuel, in this case, we could look at the flame, and we've got the lamp and the wick. That could be the fuel. That is what is going to fuel the light or the fire. Or it could be the logs in your fireplace at home. Or it could be dry grass on the ground, right? That is super, super dry. But there's something that is fuel that must be provided in order for there to be a fire. And then the third element that must be present, I mean, this is very simple, right? You can have oxygen, you can have the logs in your fireplace. There's no fire yet. So there must be a heat source that incites or creates combustion. There must be a heat source that stimulates the other 2 elements in order for the chemistry to work and then the physical properties to change. And so then when you have all 3 of sides of the triangle, you get a fire. And we know that we can have different amounts in any one of those 3 sides of the triangle, and your fire might be larger or smaller, but you have to have all 3 elements. So when I was thinking about this, I was like, oh, wow, oxygen, everywhere present, invisible, I can't see it. It responds to whatever it is around in different ways. And I thought that is exactly like how we describe what? Spirit, source, and the law, right? The law aspect of spirit, or in the teaching symbol that we have up here in the middle section, that the mystery, we don't see it, we don't know exactly how it works, but we know that when we set an intention, or when we create a movement, a beginning of a movement, or we plant the seed in the soil, that in that middle section, we don't know. I mean, that's the greatest proof that there is a higher power. I don't know how to make an oak tree grow from an acorn, but I know if I plant an acorn, it's going to grow into an oak tree, given all the other elements that are required. And so the oxygen in the fire triangle is very much like what we talk about as law. And in the last couple of weeks, in the talks, we've delved into that quite a bit. And the fuel is like when we set an intention, or we make a decision that this is what we want in our life. And so the possibility is there. The possibility is defined, very much like when you put the logs in your fireplace. but the fire doesn't start until you actually light it. And so when we talk about the aspect of spirit that is love, many of you know that we're talking about that impulse to give, that impulse to create. So we're not talking about romantic love and relationships. We're talking about spirit having unlimited givingness, the giving nature of God, the love of God to create you and you and you and you and you. That is love expressing. And so the same thing with the flame this morning. That was there, but until I added the heat. So we've got love and we've got law. And as I thought about this, I thought, when I'm adding heat, what am I doing? How am I doing? I am inciting movement. I am affirming what I want because I've already defined the fuel. I've already defined the outcome. And so in my thinking, the heat as we are creating our lives is very much like what we talk about in terms of loyalty. Now, I've got some licensed practitioners and a couple of ministers in the room, and they are in their mind going, Ernest Holmes didn't say anything about loyalty. Where is that in the textbook? And it is not in the textbook, at least in the way I'm talking about it. And I did check the concordance to see just by chance if there was a quote, but there's not. But I chose the word loyalty not just because it starts with the letter L and it makes for a nice pattern. I chose the word loyalty because the question I want you to ask yourself is, how loyal are you to what you say you want? How are you expressing loyalty to the outcome that you are trying to create in your life? Are you behaving in a way that demonstrates loyalty in your words and actions to what it is that you are trying to create? And that can come in many, many forms. So it might come simply in the form of affirmative prayer, or it might come because you write some affirmations and you begin to use them. But it's not just spiritual practice. I'm hesitating because it is not my desire for anyone in the room to feel guilty about what I'm about to say as an example. So I will use myself as an example, and it may not apply to any of you. So sometimes I set an intention or a goal. I create a cause, a first cause, and put it into action. I claim my good, what I want to have happen. And maybe a day or two later, I'm talking to my good friend, and I hear myself say, yeah, that's what I want, but that's not going to happen. Or, oh, I really see that could happen, but it's probably going to take at least 5 years. And I start putting all these conditions on what I am saying I want, I see, I know can happen, and I get in my own way. I'm not being loyal to the intention that I set because I'm not believing it, and I'm not believing that Spirit can work in, as, and through me in order to execute it. And in the human state, that is part of our human experience, and so don't beat yourself up about it. Because it happens. The trick is to recognize when it's happening and then make another choice. Like turn around and go, no, I'm not going to say those things. No, I no longer believe that. And begin to apply the heat. Because really, begin to apply the positive heat. Because really, when I'm doing the negative self-talk and when I am disbelieving in my good, I'm actually still applying heat. What am I loyal to? Because I can't live without applying heat into my life. So what am I encouraging? What am I requesting? What am I speaking about? And how am I living? Because that is what the heat is. That is going to combine with love and law to create my life. Now, how many of you are like me? I want to have a life I really love. Anybody else in here? A life I love, where all of the different aspects are coming together and where I get to interact with people who I enjoy or I learn from. And even when things are really hard, that I am able to return into the knowing, the knowledge that everything is either good or leading to good. And when I am able to do that, I am applying positive heat. I am being loyal to what it is that I have claimed in my intentions. And that spirit is already said yes to. There's only one word in the vocabulary of God, and that is yes. 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 You want a different relationship? Yes. You want to earn more money and be financially secure? Yes. You want to have a new car? Yes. You want to learn how to cook like a gourmet chef? Yes. You want to play golf at least twice a week? Yes. It doesn't matter whether it seems big or small to you. There is neither big nor small in the mind of God. And Spirit simply wants to say yes. Believe that and live in that way. And I'll tell you, when I really began to believe that, that was when I began to really notice how often I am asking Spirit to say yes to something I do not want. You must have a heat source if you want to have fire or a flame or a bonfire. You must have a heat source, and you get to determine whether that heat source is something that leads to a beautiful, warming fire in your fireplace on a cold day, or if, because the heat you applied is flicking a cigarette butt out of your car and starting a wildfire that damages not only the ground but people's homes and livelihoods. What kind of heat are you providing in your life? So if there must be a source of heat in order for us to have a flame or a fire, and so you must be intentional if you want to have your fire be a life you love. Love and law are always working. What kind of fire are you lighting in your life? Now I do want to make this one comment, because sometimes in our lives things happen that we immediately say, wait a minute, I wasn't asking for that. I wasn't asking for that divorce. I wasn't asking for my home to go into foreclosure. I wasn't asking to get fired from my job. I wasn't asking to have a medical diagnosis of cancer or some other disease that requires treatment. I wasn't asking for that. That is not what I was putting into mind. I was saying I'm healthy and happy and joyous and free every day, 5 times a day. So what we have to remember is that we don't cause everything that happens in our lives, but we do have control over how we respond to it. And our journey is to be lighting the fire of being the example, no matter what the condition, no matter what the circumstance is, to continuously return to spiritual principle and allow that to guide us. So don't be confused that if you are applying the heat and you are consciously applying what you perceive as positive heat, it doesn't mean that things that are challenging, difficult, scary, disrespectful, it doesn't mean none of those things will ever happen. It means that you get to use the principles in a stronger way, in a way that demonstrates your faith and allows you to express that loyalty to the divine ideal. Does that make any sense? So there are lots of sources of heat that you can use in your life that will stimulate this life that you love. And in Science of Mind, of course, we talk a lot about mental science and how we apply the mental principles in our lives to shift condition, to heal what appears to need healing, even though we, on a deeper level, believe there's nothing to heal, only truth to reveal. And so in our human state, we go through a process. But intention, the decisions we make, not just the ideas we have, but the decisions we make to actually go for it. The decision that Lainey made to go for accompanying herself as she sang the song. The decision that we make, and trained thought. What is trained thought? Ernest Holmes says that trained thought is far more powerful than untrained. Trained thought is the discipline to continue to return to principle over and over and over again, even when it seems as if it's not working. Because what I know is true is that sometimes transformation happens just like this. And sometimes I have to remind myself that the universe is reconfiguring a whole lot of things to make it look like it's just coincidentally showing up. Right? So sometimes in affirmative prayer, you'll hear me say, and so what I know is happening right now is that the universe is reconfiguring every atom, every cell, every molecule in my body, every system and every organ so that it works together. The universe is reconfiguring every thought, every idea, every activity that I am involved in, and every relationship that needs to be reconfigured so that the right people are in the right place, and I am in my right place in order for this to occur and manifest in physical form, because it is already done in the mind of God, and Spirit is moving stuff around so that I can have that which I desire and that which I have committed to and that which I am daily, sometimes hourly, reinforcing with clarity that this is my desire. So that is what trained thought is. And it is way more powerful than untrained thought. What is untrained thought? Those random thoughts we have, the habits that we have, the things that we learned when we were 3 years old and we didn't even know we were learning them, but they come up and tell us what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. Untrained thought. And it's powerful, and it does affect us. But trained thought is more powerful than untrained thought. And so trained thought is one of the most powerful things that you can use when you are applying positive heat to what it is you are trying to co-create with love and law. Because all of our thoughts are like molds. picture a mold in your mind, like a Jell-O mold, or you want to make a bundt cake, and there's a specific mold that you pour the batter into, so when it bakes into that particular shape, right? And so, or you play with kids, or maybe you play as a child, no matter what your age is, and you just pull out the Play-Doh, and you have like cookie cutters or molds that mold that dough into the shape that you want it to be. And so Ernest Holmes reminds us that the molds that shape our lives, they're made from our subjective minds through conscious and specific thought, conscious and specific purpose, conscious and specific direction. So we cannot underestimate the power of our mind in joining with everything that we do in order to give us the life that we most desire. So that's what this chapter is really about. We might be using spiritual mind treatment, or we might be using some visioning, or we might be using prayer, other forms of prayer. We might be taking a class. There are so many things that we can do in action. And Dr. Petra is going to talk a lot about that next week. But the action doesn't come first. Before you can take an action, you actually have had to put it into your mind and created the mindset that then there's a voice saying to you, or intuition guiding you to take that action. And so in this chapter, in the introduction to the science of mind, it's the reminder that it is our thoughts. But there's also this: to be lost merely in our thoughts, or merely in a prayer, might stop us from actually doing the work we need to do, right? Oh, I'm just going to meditate about this and it will change. I'm just going to do a positive, affirmative prayer that racism ends in our society and it'll just take care of itself. Oh, I'm going to write affirmations that equity and justice become the truth of our land. So it's easy that if we just stay in our thoughts, it might terminate in an unconscious way our desire to escape the activity of life. We're in this human body. We don't get to just be ethereal. We live our lives. Therefore, we affirm that divine intelligence not only knows what to do, it impels us to act on its knowing. So I don't have to make it all up, but if I am communicating with Spirit on a regular basis, then I am going to be inspired, or I love the word impel. I'm going to be impelled to take some action based on the wisdom of Spirit. And I don't know if you've ever been there. I've been there a number of times where I just needed to be still and daily go inside and say, really, what's my next step? What is for me to do or say? Where should I go next? And I get that knowing that this, it may not make sense, but this is what I am being called to do. And that is Spirit impelling me to act because it knows more than I do. It impels us to act on its wisdom, not our analysis, human analysis, no matter how smart we are. And that can show up in many different ways. It impels us to act on its knowing, and we connect often through spiritual practice. Or it may, the more that we do that, it will impel us to act on its knowing. Once we are sturdy and strong in our individual behavior, it will really impel us to gather with other people. And so maybe that means you join a Sangha group or a spiritual discussion group, or you take a class like these amazing people who took foundations class last year, so that they can learn together. And we begin to move beyond our individual box and begin to link arms with other people who are also on the spiritual journey and using spiritual guidance in order to move forward. And then, as that happens more and more and more, it's no surprise that Spirit's wisdom begins to impel us to move forward collectively in even larger groups, to do more for ourselves, to stay in alignment, and to impact the world. And so if you were one of the people who was representing CSLDallas at the Women's March yesterday, I just want you to stand up if you are in the room. Yes. Thank you. It's no mistake. It's not about politics. It's about spiritual expression. It's about engaging our spirituality in a way that we hold ourselves accountable individually, and we know that our actions begin to shift the entire world, in this case Dallas, but we know that these marches were happening in every continent around the world. Not always in protest, but if you go to CSLDallas on Facebook, you'll see one of the videos of our group of people and many others saying, "Why are you here?" I'm here because I want to be love, and I want to see love and equity and justice and inclusion be the way that my city is, my community is, my workplace is, my nation is, and in fact, the entire world. And when we are moving from that place, because we are impelled by Spirit to act on its knowledge, then we understand that there are so many juicy, delicious ways for us to have a positive impact in the world. So today, we capture the essence of chapter 3. What is it that Spirit does? What is it that Spirit is doing and expressing itself as an individualized expression in each one of us? And what we know is that it works for us, it works through us, and it works as us, according to the order we place and our receptivity to receiving that which we truly desire. So I invite you this week to bring on the heat, not necessarily in a way that is about fighting against anything, but in a way that affirms what you want and who you see yourself being in the world, in a way that represents the power and the presence of the divine as it wants to express in, as, and through you. Bring on the heat individually to achieve what you want, and then you will see how to do that same thing for the rest of the world. And I invite you now to join me in prayer. At the end of this chapter 3, in the introduction to the science of mind, Ernest Holmes ends the chapter with this quote: "How much of this infinite good is ours? all of it, as much of it as we can embody. And so we sink into that place where there is no separation, that there is only one source. And it is a source that desires to give it all of it. It has already given life and free will to each one present, each one in the sound of my voice. It has already imbued its DNA into each thing, each person that it has created. And so the spiritual DNA is already seeking to express itself and to expand and to demonstrate. So right here and right now, I claim that now is the time to embody all that can be embodied, to express all that can be expressed, to share and to grow and to become Spirit's highest vision for humankind overall and for each one of us individually. So let us each this week go forward, recommitting to exploring and expressing Spirit's highest vision for each one of us in the world in the physical form now. For we each have an eternity for our individual soul to express, expand, and to live, but our human experience is now. I'm so grateful to know that this is already complete in the mind of God, and this intention that I set for myself and for all others, the universe simply says yes. So I release into the divine activity of that wholeness, that truth, that guarantee of life expanding, knowing that it is Christ consciousness in each one of us that allows us to connect with this and to reveal it. So I let it go. I allow it to be. And if you are in agreement that you are ready to take this step as well, then I invite you to breathe and anchor this with me together by saying, and so it is.
I trust you've received some good today from this message. So why not share some good with others? Donate to CSLDallas so we can continue to spread messages like this all over the world. You can text to give at 972-954-4404 or go to our website, csldallas.org/donate. Both are safe and secure and easy to do. Do it now.